think today's shift with AI feels bigger, but it is oddly familiar at the same time in terms of a massive change in consumer behavior and marketers kind of working hard to keep up with the speed of the consumer.
So do you see this as as profound as we make it out to be?
It takes a long time to build trust and only a moment to lose it, right? And so because people rely on the information they get from Google, we really wanted to have a high bar for quality and accuracy.
How it is changing and will change advertising.
80% of Google Ads advertisers are already using at least one AI-powered thing, and 2 million of our advertisers are already using generative AI creative tools. We had a pretty big program called Enhanced Campaigns around 2013 that helped advertisers figure out how to apply their buying strategies from desktop into mobile and then tablet, one of the most successful launches I've ever been a part of in the ads business.
This week on Next to Media, I spoke with Dan Taylor, VP of Global Ads at Google, upon the 25th anniversary of the company's storied search business. A business that is still dominant for now, but facing massive changes in consumer behavior and renewed competition. Dan and I talk about whether Google is moving fast enough to take on the likes of ChatGPT and Perplexity, and whether search ads will remain as effective in complex conversational search queries as they've been over the past 2.5 decades. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Next to Media. I'm Mike Shields. I'm here with Dan Taylor. He's a vice president at Global Ads at Google. Hey, Dan, thanks for being here.
Hey, Mike. Good to see you.
Lots to talk about upon what happens to be, we're talking 2 decades of Google search, which is pretty amazing.
25 of Google Ads.
25. Yeah. Before we get into that and the state of the very interesting time we are and find ourselves in search, just give me a little bit about your history there. Tell me about your Google career. What was your first project?
Yeah, sure. So I joined Google in 2006. So I've been here almost 20 years. I came from a broadcast advertising sales background. So, television, radio, traditional media, as they call it. And obviously I was drawn by the consumer shift to people spending more time online, but also this notion of being able to measure advertising and adjust and adapt on what's working in closer to real time. So that was pretty attractive to me.
Even though that was probably like a killer job, right? Broadcast sales at that time, it's probably scary to make that move.
It was. I mean, it was one of those, I could put my pinstripe suits in the closet and go find myself a pair of jeans and come to the office. It did. I had spent a lot of time, obviously, building relationships in the national sales arena and working with ad agencies. But interestingly enough, my first project was kind of a bridge. And so the first project I worked on was bringing digital ads like buying capabilities into traditional formats like radio and television. And so the project was ahead of its time in 2006 in terms of can we apply addressable advertising technology to traditional broadcast and traffic systems and measurement. And
so this was
we learned a lot.
Google TV ads was, and then there was a radio company you guys acquired, if I remember correctly, around then.
Yes, yep. DMark was the name of the company, and Google Audio Ads was the offering. And so we learned a lot. We made some inroads in that space, but definitely was ahead of its time. So worked on that for a couple of years. And then moved into the search and YouTube sales, display and video, programmatic, kind of kept moving to the next emerging space, mobile and so on. And the current role that I have is helping connect advertiser needs with our product roadmap. And so it's a strategy role across all of our products.
Yeah.
It's
funny because TV is doing all that stuff. It just took a little longer than everybody maybe expected or wanted at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Connected TV and podcasting, those and all these new environments. So those early investments did pay off as we started to think about how to not only build partnerships and relationships, but how to monetize and understand what advertisers and publishers in that space care about.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about this. It feels like a fairly dramatic moment in the internet and in digital advertising and in search. The shift towards conversational answer-driven search. It's funny because some people talk as if it is a whole new internet. Everything we know is changing. And then others are kind of maybe, hold on a second. This is like this 0-click search world. We've been getting there gradually over time. So I guess, do you see this as profound as we make it out to be, or is this like an evolution or culmination of something?
Yeah, I think profound is a good word, but not an overnight sensation, if you will, right? So I think, on top of many years of innovation, which is in our DNA, people are fundamentally changing how they search, how they discover information, how they interact with technology. And that creates new opportunities for advertisers to plug into those moments and be there in the relevant moments for a consumer with a product or service. But, I was reflecting back on the 25 years, and, Sundar, when he first became CEO of Google, one of the first things that he said was that we're going to be an AI first company. And that was 2016. And so that
Funny, I
manifested.
don't even think that registered with me as much back then as it does now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's 10 years ago, right? And so that started to manifest, at least in the ads business, with more predictive and analytical AI, helped inform things like smart bidding and search, modeling conversions when we couldn't necessarily measure them directly, and some of these AI-powered advertising tools like Performance Max and so on. And so the generative AI piece and what consumers experiences see that are different, that feels much more immediate. Like, wow, like AI is suddenly here, but we've laid a lot of groundwork, and so it's helped create an expansionary moment for search, and that does feel big, and it does feel profound.
I want to get into how it is changing and will change advertising. Does this compare at all to you? Search was still search on mobile, but it was a big moment at that time where people were like, oh, this is not going to maybe perform or behave as the same way as it had. Does this echo that period at all for you?
Yeah, I think today's shift with AI feels bigger, but it is oddly familiar at the same time in terms of um, a massive change in consumer behavior, and marketers kind of working hard to keep up with the speed of the consumer. And so I remember, initially talking to customers about they should be advertising in mobile, and it was a hard sell, right?
People are like, it's a small screen, and what are people going to do there? Like,
the screens are small, the ad formats weren't fit for purpose, the buying tools definitely didn't work, the measurement didn't work, and so, but after that initial period of kind of ignoring the problem and hoping it would go away, or copy and pasting the same strategy that you had on desktop, right? Duck and cover. But then, tools like, how do you build a mobile website? How do you embrace the app economy? How can you adapt our tools? We had a pretty big program called Enhanced Campaigns around 2013 that helped advertisers figure out how to apply their buying strategies from desktop into mobile, and then tablet. We also had a separate tablet strategy at the time, right? That was kind of emerging. And so once kind of we built some tools around, bidding differently on mobile, new ad formats, cross-device measurement, it unlocked a ton of success. I think it feels a little bit like that moment, but what's different with AI is that advertisers are embracing this shift much faster, in part because we've been on this journey for over a decade with some of the things I told you around,
right?
Getting customers to adopt these assets.
They waited. Maybe they waited last time. It wasn't good. Let's move fast now.
Yeah, I thought one of the things that was really interesting, and I get this question a lot, is how do you get advertisers to adopt these new AI-powered experiences, right? Like AI overviews and generative AI creatives and things like that. In many ways, we've been laying the foundation for that. And so, bidding, reaching audiences, asset-driven creative, and these, fully AI-powered campaign types that we've had, that allows you to be much more nimble when these new surfaces come up. And so, 80% of Google Ads advertisers are already using at least one AI-powered thing. And, 2 million of our advertisers are already using generative AI creative tools. And so it was one of those things where it wasn't a cold start in terms of getting advertisers into these new experiences.
Speaking of cold start, like, I think there's a perception that, or there's a narrative that, given their explosion of ChatGPT and others, did Google move a little too slow on AI? Like, what do you say to that when people ask that question?
Well, first I refer back to what we just talked about, which is we've been on a AI journey for 10 years. And it's, core to everything we do, from search to maps to ads, right? You think about Google Maps being able to tell you how to take a different driving directions to get around traffic, right? Yeah, AI's in there. But I think the generative AI piece in particular we see that it has the potential to change the world. We're excited by that. We put out AI principles. I was reflecting back in 2018 to sort of take this approach that we want to be bold, but we also want to be responsible with 5 trillion searches every year. This requires us to be helpful and get it right. It takes a long time to build trust and only a moment to lose it, right? And so because people rely on the information they get from Google, we really wanted to have a high bar for quality and accuracy. And I think, and again, being in ads, we see time and again, if you just focus on building a good user experience, building a successful business around it follows. I tell my teams hey, it's not a race. We weren't the first search engine. We weren't the first email service. We weren't the first map or video website. And if you focus on building a great experience and being helpful, the business comes. And so we're already seeing that with AI overviews, which are being used today by 2 billion people. And Google Labs, which is this area that we've built within Google to launch new and experimental features that allows us to kind of experiment at scale without moving it into the core experience until we feel like it's right.
One of the world's most prolific creators and distributors of premium content, such as America's Got Talent, The Price is Right, and Family Feud, reaching over 100 million U.S. households, leverages Elemental TV's AI-powered One Audience platform to offer advertisers access to its extensive library of iconic titles, all through a leaner, optimized supply path, lesser intermediaries, enabling increased brand safety and more cost-efficient campaigns. Discover how at elementaltv.com/oneaudience. That's ELEMENTAL TV.com/oneaudience. Thank you. I want to maybe come back to labs in a moment, but getting back to your idea that if you do it right, the business will come. I think that initially when AI overviews and conversational search hit, there was I remember a few people writing, I don't know if advertising is going to work here. This might just be not the right canvas. This is not what people are asking for. Will it be welcome? What have you found early on? Is it just take a different approach? Is it as welcome as a traditional search?
We're not assuming it's going to be all the same plays will work in these new environments. And so, for example, the average length of a search query in AI mode is 2 to 3 times longer than what you'd see in a traditional query. And so
that's really different.
Yeah. And so, yes, AI helps us better understand those longer and more complex queries and what question that we're asking. A lot of this comes down to when is that right moment to be helpful. I think one of the things that I've loved about being at Google in the ads business is this core value that ads need to be relevant to the consumer, needs to be additive to the experience, and our business model rewards this, right? We don't get paid in search unless a consumer clicks on an ad, or even in YouTube, skippable TrueView ads. I remember when we first came out with those, it was one of those things where if your ad's not relevant,
what are you doing
enough
for
users to engage with it, we don't make any money. The advertiser doesn't succeed. And so it's a little bit
That's a new playbook for sure. Yeah.
And so we're thinking that same way, obviously, in places like AI mode. I think what we've learned in AI overviews, we're starting to apply some of those things into our experiments with AI overviews. And so our key learning here is where in the journey, not the size of the ad or the format, it's really the most important factor for feedback. And so, if someone wants to talk about training for a marathon, that could come to us as a beginner type query where putting running shoes in the first result is probably a little early, right?
Where the old search, if you just said what kind of shoes you wear for the marathon or whatever, that's going to be you're probably at the end of that journey. You're closer to.
Well, almost a little different, right? So how to train for a marathon doesn't even say anything about I need shoes, right?
Yeah, right.
And so that's going to generate foundational advice, like a training regimen and nutrition, and maybe presenting ads for running shoes up front is going to be a miss. But alternatively, if there's an AI mode query about prepping for the New York Marathon, which is, I think, 2 weeks from now, that person's going to likely need really specific information like weather, what clothing to wear, whether you need extra electrolyte supplements because it's going to be a hot day. Those are the places where, okay, this may make sense to show an ad in this moment. So that's the main thing that we've learned, is that when someone enters AI mode and AI overviews, like an ad might not be the first thing that they're looking for. Or actually, let me rephrase that. A product or service might not be the thing that they're looking for, right? And so, but because of the way that consumers are interacting with AI overviews and AI mode, there are opportunities to introduce the ad. And that's the main thing that we've been focusing on, is when is it additive? When is it helpful? Because it can be pretty off-putting if you're going for information and a bunch of products get thrown at you in this experience.
On the flip side, you've talked about this, I think, where the nature of longer queries and conversational search, it can open up new commercial moments that maybe weren't either readily available through the traditional search, or they were at different parts of the funnel. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. And in fact, I think this is the aha moment for many of our advertisers. Um, AI in search has been expansionary for Google. People are coming to Google earlier in their discovery journey than ever. They're asking kind of these broader questions. They're not searching like a search engine marketer would, with like very specific things that they're looking for. And this is a new opportunity to introduce consumers to products and services they may not even know that they should be asking for those types of thing. And tools like AI Max were specifically built for this use case in mind, where you can't necessarily predict what these longer, more exploratory searches are. And I'll give you a personal example. My son is in his second year of college. He's upgraded his dorm room. It's now kind of a apartment-like thing with a kitchenette. Yeah, I know. If only I had as nice a dorm back in the day. It's got views of the city. Anyway,
Did I
the
ever cook
space was
ever?
limited. There's a kitchenette, but there's no place to sit and eat. And so space was limited, and we're like, let's let Dad show you AI mode here, about how to furnish a tiny apartment. And we didn't really know what kind of things were available there. We just knew we needed something. And AI mode used Gemini in this thing called query fan out, which is kind of a engineering term, but basically it means, how do you take one long query and turn that into several shorter queries to come up with a lot of information that could be relevant. And so we got designed.
So in a long query, there's a bunch of different pieces that could lead you to in different directions. Is it?
Exactly. And so Gemini kind of breaks it down into this person could be looking for, space saving. This person could be looking for, small furniture. This person could be looking for cooking utensils. It's sort of like tries to figure out all the different information that might be useful to help. And so we got, of course, like design tips, light colors, and using vertical space. But then something called a lift top coffee table, which apparently is a regular coffee table. And it's got storage underneath, and it rises and lowers to eating height. So, when you want to eat, it comes up and it's a table size. And when you don't,
where was
it's down
that?
to a coffee table, right? Yeah, exactly. And it also anticipated what's next as we followed up, and it offered first local stores with inventory that had that, and other ideas for like small kitchen appliances. And so those are all opportunities that, in the old days of search engine marketing, you wouldn't bid on, tiny apartment ideas.
Right. That would be too broad. It
would be too up
here. That wouldn't perform it, right.
Yeah. And so the user wins by solving the problem. The advertiser gets these new moments of relevance to be there. And so that, I think, has been as I mentioned before, the big aha moment, and why advertisers, I think, are really leaning into things like AI Max and Performance Max. I can't come up with a keyword list to address that use case that I just gave you, but I can use AI to understand what are those moments that are relevant for my business to be there.
Theoretically, this brings more search advertisers to the table. It's still very early, and it's still unknown like how these things will perform. Do you almost have to, I don't want to say train or reset expectations for how performative search advertising would be because of these different moments that are maybe less like I'm buying something right now versus I'm not sure?
Yeah, if you take this notion that searches are going to be in different parts of the funnel, as they say, right? Can you have the same expectations for all of those? What we're seeing so far is great product fit for the AI features in search. and advertisers are adopting it. AI Max is probably one of the most successful launches I've ever been a part of in the ads business. And overall, we're seeing monetization right now in these new surfaces at approximately the same rate. And so advertisers are finding those moments of relevance. We've also launched some new tools to help advertisers, figure out how to bid in these kind of multimodal experiences. And so search bidding exploration is something we announced earlier this year to help kind of experiment with like what's the right bid for some of these queries that might be a little further afield. And so it's early, but I think advertisers are embracing it as opposed to like, that's not really my department. That's like the brand advertising department and things like that. So, and I think the purchase journey hasn't been linear for a long time. And so advertisers are kind of pretty in tune with understanding things like, well, I want to be in these moments that matter. I want to understand, does even being in these moments, do they drive any brand value for me in addition to whether they drive any
How do I capture
transaction
that? How do I
value?
measure it? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I think it's relatively early, but we're on a great foundation where it's monetizing well. Users are searching more; they're finding a lot of benefit in the experience. That's creating new commercial queries, and so the flywheel there seems to be moving quite well.
Any other examples that you can provide of like experiments you've tried or different brands that have come to the table and found new kinds of queries that have been working for them?
Generally speaking, the experiments that advertisers are doing is generally adopting AI Max, adopting Performance Max, putting their entire product catalog if they're a merchant.
A lot more creative than I used to see.
There's a lot more creative. Generative AI creative has been one of the more exciting things that I've seen is the ability to scale creative from your product feed to be able to customize it and things like that. And so advertisers
they're not cautious. Like I think some big brands are very still seem a little cautious about going all the way with generative. But you're seeing these search advertisers go for it.
There are. I mean, search advertising, the canvas is relatively straightforward in a lot of ways, and so we're finding two things. First of all, is the majority of advertisers are doing some form of asset-based creative today, right? They're providing text creative, landing pages, visual assets where we think they might be additive to the experience.
Right.
And
we're not talking about TV commercials just yet.
What's that?
We're not talking about TV commercials just yet and having somebody replace everything.
Right. And so in the video and the display advertising space in particular, there's a different level of appetite. And so we have Asset Studio and Google Ads that allows you to create all these different visual and sight, sound, and motion creatives. But advertisers have the ability to be like, well, I don't want this color scheme, or you can put some guardrails on it, brand suitability and things like that, and also approve the creatives before they're deployed widely. On search side, there's again a much more healthy appetite to experiment because of the canvas.
You've mentioned product catalogs a couple of times. We've seen all, like there's a lot of excitement around, Walmart still has shopping ads and ChatGPT. What are you seeing right now with shopping? Does it all go to the bots? Does this totally change retail media? Does this just become another place to shop? Like what are you seeing early on here?
Yeah, I think the Walmart ChatGPT, I'll leave it to them to talk about that. I don't think it was an advertising announcement, but I think it was.
No, it's not yet.
It's an opportunity to kind of facilitate a transaction when, for example, like we talked about before, where the journey puts you in a place where a product from Walmart might be the right answer to what you're looking for. It's a great example, I think, of how merchants are realizing that this changing user behavior around gravitating to AI-powered experience. Let's find the opportunity to add value there. I think, to your point, it's early. Agentic, we think, is additive to these tools to help businesses drive better results and with less effort, while also helping people get stuff done. I don't think the core tenets of marketing around connecting audience to products and services are the right moment, but the tools are definitely changing. Good example of this, at I/O, we announced an agentic checkout feature to help people track prices, set how much they want to pay, and then buy the items when the price is right. So I always use shoes as my example, but if I want to buy a pair of shoes, but I only want to buy them if they're at a certain price point, instead of losing me as a shopper when I'm in that moment, it's like, these are too expensive, or I'm going to wait for the Black Friday sale or whatever. Agentic can just find the price drop and then retailers get the win. And so it's like, buy from me when it hits this price, rather than me abandoning the shopping cart
You
or
don't have
going
to
to
sit
another
there and stare
retailer.
at the machine and
Yeah, I
poke
just
around.
do this for me. I'll take it off my to-do list, and then
All
that
right,
helps
I
the
like
user
that.
get what they want. And the retailer, critically, doesn't lose that moment either, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so I think that is probably a key insight in what a lot of the merchants are thinking is like, how do I get in these moments to reduce the friction? Like we think about this even in search, like anything that we can do to reduce the friction of people searching, we're trying to do, because we find that when we do that, people search more, right? Think about people taking pictures to do searches with their phone camera 25 billion times a month. I mean, those are the types of things that those weren't search queries 2
No,
years ago.
there wasn't an
And
opportunity
so
before.
I think the merchant space is similar. It's like, how do I reduce the friction to get from start to end of a purchase journey? And I think the real power there lies in how this comes together in the future, how agents and advertising can work together, again, to make it more seamless. So I think that's the macro trend.
Last thing is, I was thinking about this. What is, people are talking about Google facing search competition from OpenAI specifically. I know there is Perplexity. Is that your competitive set right now? Or is it also these other search vehicles like TikTok, like Amazon, like Pinterest? What is that all the kind of this same area that you've got to focus on?
Yeah, look, I'm in the ads business, so anywhere people are spending time and marketers are spending money, that's competition or addressable market for us. And so, to your point, AI is expanding what's possible, and it's introducing new ways for people to discover and new user experiences around that. And so, it feels incredibly competitive right now. Fortunately, I also think the pie is getting bigger. It's not a zero-sum game. But even just think about the advertising space in the past few years alone. We've seen countless new entrants, even outside of AI, right? Like I'm competing with grocery stores. I'm competing with ride-sharing services, big box streaming services.
Everybody's an ad network thing. It's
everybody's got an
there.
ad model now. And then from an AI perspective, and certainly there's a lot of chatter around that. And so there's the consumer thing where we want to think about competing for ways that people find and discover information, and the advertising opportunities that go with it. But again, I think it doesn't feel like a zero-sum game, but it feels incredibly competitive today. Yeah.
All right. Well, then, good luck with the next 25 years or so. Awesome stuff. Thanks for your time here. Let's talk again.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mike. Take care.
A big thanks to my guest this week, Google's Dan Taylor, and my partners at Elemental TV and Sabio. If you like this week's episode, please take a moment to rate and leave a review. We have lots more to bring you, so please hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time for more on what's next in media. Thanks for listening.